There's two rules we have when it comes to product at Thankyou. So rule 1, make great product. Rule 2, never break rule 1. It is a worthwhile quest to mine purpose. You know, why are we here? Why does this organization exist? And I would caution those that see this as the new paint, kind of get the purpose paint out and quickly like put it all over the organization and look, we're purposey, you know, and there's so much of that right now. And you can see the paint dripping, and it consumers smell it. It's not genuine.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Make It Happen show. I'm Tim Morris, the CEO at The Entourage, and today I'm joined by Daniel Flynn, the co-founder and managing director of Thankyou. Now I'm sure a lot of you know Thankyou. They make amazing consumer products from bottled water to body wash, and 100% of the profits go to tackling global poverty. In just 12 years, they've raised more than $17 million for projects in the developing world. So in this conversation, we talk a bit about the journey up to now, but specifically we talk about what's ahead for Thankyou, and there is some incredibly exciting stuff coming down the pipeline. We also talk a lot about how they challenge the status quo. So if you're in business and you want to shake things up, if you want to change the way that people do things, this is definitely the episode for you. Let's get into it. Daniel Flynn, so good to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Tim, it's good to be here. I'm well. Our daughter, who's 10 months old, she just started sleeping through the nights like 2 weeks ago, and that has changed our lives. So I feel a little more normal, to be honest.
Yeah. As a father of two boys, with the youngest being only just turned 1, I feel your pain. I think a great place to start is, I think you're probably too humble to say it like this, but certainly for me, I think you guys, Thankyou, as a business, as a movement, it really showed me what it was to kind of like harness consumer spending and channel it to those in need. Like certainly, you know, the business or the organization that I really associate with that. How over the last, more than a decade now, have you made that happen?
Yeah, well, look, thanks, man. It's kind. I think the idea of Thankyou is very simple. We talk about this one world that we all live in, and it has two extremes. So there is extreme poverty. Stats right now is 736 million people living in that. And then we have, well, we call it extreme consumerism. Well, we spend, as a collective kind of humans, we spend $63 trillion every year on stuff.
It's mind-boggling how much that is.
It is mind-boggling. And particularly, and then you kind of filter these two extremes in the one world, and you're like, wow, like, so you got some people who are literally dying because they don't have access to basic human rights like water and food, education. And yeah, so I think for us, Thankyou is a bridge between these two extremes in our world. And that bridge, I suppose our job is to build it, and we use product to do that. One part of how we've done it is focus on making great product. There's two rules we have when it comes to product at Thankyou. So rule 1, make great product. Rule 2, never break rule 1. And the asterisk on rule 2 is important. It says never use a good cause to sell an average product. And so I suppose in one sense, in answer to your question, it's like we focus on making a remarkable product. Those that have bought a hand wash or body wash, personal care, we focus on every detail from design to label to fragrance to packaging and sourcing. But the other part of the secret, I suppose, on how we've built this is people. We call it a consumer movement, but these are kind of the radical supporters of Thankyou who haven't just bought the product, but have campaigned with us, have helped crowdfund at times when we needed it. And really that small group of people plus great product has cut us into the real world, into all major supermarkets, into all of like retail, and has helped us raise a collective $17 million, which we've distributed so far.
That's phenomenal. Well, certainly I know in Australia, I think we've been very lucky over the last, couple of years. Certainly been challenges, but compared to a lot of the rest of the world, we've had it pretty lucky. And I can imagine some of the countries that you work in and some of the communities that you guys help, like it certainly hasn't been anywhere near as easy as it's been for us. Like, what's the situation like on the ground in a number of the countries that you work in?
Yeah, look, I think the global view of the COVID disruption it's really confronting. We are, as a society, according to all studies, we were already cause fatigued before the pandemic, certainly now even more so. But they are, the research so far is saying that for the first time in 3 decades, we're going to go backwards in the
Mm.
plight to end extreme poverty. And there is estimates upwards of 150 million more people. Charities have seen dips in donations from governments who've shifted funding to COVID response, from individuals and corporates who've kind of had the look, there's uncertainty. I kind of need to look after my own home or my own company. And so, I mean, there are charities pulling out of countries, big organizations, dropping huge numbers of stuff. I would say there's a tailspin element in the world right now, and more than
Mhm.
ever, we need some very bold moves and action.
Yeah, which on one hand is it's a challenging thing to get your head around. It's on one hand it's quite depressing, but also it just means there's more to be done. Like there's more impact for everyone to make. There's it's good that you guys have got a bit of a decade of experience under your belt because you can really start to ramp things up. So what are you doing to get more people to sort of buy into the thank you story, to buy more through you so you can contribute more? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, look, we look at the state that the world's in, and it is heavy, um, and particularly for our partners and hearing their stories and what they're going through, and it is heavy. But
Mm.
what 2020 showed, thank you, and it showed Justine, my co-founder, and I and our team, we saw there is a role for thank you in today and certainly tomorrow's world. So for context, in 2020, we sold a lot of hand sanitizer and hand wash. Uh, Shout out to everyone on this, thing who bought one. But for context, in 12 years, we'd raised $7 million for our projects. And in the space of a few months in 2020, we raised a further $10 million.
Wow.
And we gave that, right? So
Mm.
it's that was 2020. And so the interesting thing is you had this tailspin of all these organizations who are in a really tough spot. And then you've got Thank You having its best year ever because
Mm.
consumers kept consuming even though the world's upside down. And so in 2020, we had already been preparing something very big. And I tell you, it was almost like these two things lined up. And you couldn't plan this stuff. But in September 2020, we launched a campaign. It's called No Small Plan. And like I said before, the world's got some tough problems, but it needs some bold moves and some big change. And so, No Small Plan was a challenge to the industry. We
Mm.
announced that we'd made $10 million and given it, but we're a tiny company from literally one of the smallest countries on the planet. And so we threw the challenge out to Unilever, to P&G, and to 9 other global FMCG companies. And we said, hey, like, the thank you model works and we're taking it to the world. And in our mind, that can either be a slow process, but we asked a different question. Well, what if instead of competing with all of you, we partnered with one of you?
Mm.
And in that partnership, you make and distribute through your manufacturing facilities and supply chain, and you don't own Thank You, but the partnership is a win-win. And
Mm.
the ultimate result is we go from making $10 million in a tiny little country to what could be an exponentially bigger number. And so we threw the challenge out there. We called it No Small Plan because it wasn't small. It's a big idea. We sent the invitation, um, and in it had this like license agreement concept, which we based off Yeezy and Adidas, Disney, Virgin, Starbucks, a bunch of companies. We'd had some kind of remarkable people who'd worked on those deals help us put this agreement together. And so we sent them this invitation, and we put it in a 26-foot glass truck. We delivered it to Unilever's head office in London and into P&G's head office in Cincinnati, all from lockdown in Melbourne. In fact, the
Mm.
video was meant to be filmed in a cool warehouse that became our garage. So literally Justine, and we're in lockdown, she is setting up lights, camera, sound. They're doing everything through Zoom, telling us how to work the stuff. And
Yeah.
then the filmmakers are genius. They made it look amazing by the end. But we did all this from lockdown. We threw the challenge out, and it has entered a heck of a roller coaster now for 13 months because,
Mm.
I mean, we just invited the biggest companies on the planet to play ball with an all-for-purpose organization. And yeah, I mean, it started wild. I think we had 840 media features in 38 countries, which is just
Wow.
epic. Um, And we had people in over 38 countries post their support of this campaign, and I think it had something like 2.6 billion impressions on social.
Wow. And so can you what have been some of the responses? I know you haven't actually like announced the partner yet, and I know there's something probably in the works, but what can you share? What was the response like?
Look, yeah, what can we share? I'll tell you this. We're optimists at Thank You, and we headed into this thing thinking this will be a 100-meter race. And we've kind of been around for a while, and so we thought, look, worst case, this will be an 800-meter. Turned out to not even be a half marathon. This is a full marathon at Thank You, and we're running to the end. And it's complicated, it's complex, because at the end of the day, Thank You is not looking for a deal. We're not looking for a cash payout. We are looking for a partnership. And I would say there's a couple of buckets, some straight off the bat of the bigger companies that were just like, we're not interested, and that's I'll save my thoughts for another day. Then there's other groups who were interested and still are, and have put forward, and this is where the most work has gone, the back and forward on their terms and their ideas and thank yous and where do they meet. And I'd say the biggest piece of the puzzle was not owning Thank You. Some companies were pretty open, like, no, we can't unless we can control you. It's like, oh, that's lovely. Like, well, this doesn't work. This doesn't work for our model. I was like, I just appreciate the honesty. And we've had some phenomenal, ideas put forward to Thank You, and we've walked away from them, which I think surprised some people, but we're not, again, looking for a deal. And then what made this a little more cool, complicated, exciting, plot twisty is that we invited 11 companies, but there's a heap of others who we didn't invite, and they put their hand up and said, hey, like, we can't do the whole world, but we could do Europe really well, or we could do Asia or the US, and it's funny because, I think we went into this going, we want one global partner, and we may walk away with that still. The jury's out. But we also may walk away with multiple partners in multiple regions and kind of a bit more of a revolutionist approach. So, we hold with bated breath at Thank You. We are hoping for an early Christmas present, but, it may be a late New Year's sort of, thing. We'll see.
Chinese New Year, whatever, as long as it happens.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, because as you were saying that, I'm like, I was going to say, well, you only need one, but then that's a really good point. Maybe it's four who really align on values and do want to play the way that you want to play, and you can be open to it. I think actually there's a concept in there that I really want to touch on, and I think the listeners would really appreciate digging into it a little bit. Is I think you guys have developed a really good pattern of not just product launches, but kind of like you come up with these concepts and it's almost like this challenger approach. There's obviously the story about you flying their helicopters in front of the supermarket's office. I think I remember something about like getting everyone to email 7-Eleven so many times that they're like, okay, we'll have the freaking meeting. There's kind of, you've got this real pattern, I think, has developed around like come up with a concept which is kind of like challenge the status quo, then turn into something interesting and exciting enough that you can rally the troops around it. That helps you get the momentum. Can you kind of unpack your thinking behind that? Like, have you thought of it as a formula?
Well, yeah, we have, but it's not as simple, and it's very hard to manufacture. The best way we could describe this is we asked people, supporters of Thank You or people new to the brand, to help us solve real problems. And that's the key. They're real problems. They're not made up sort of marketing hypothetical. They're real problems. The supermarkets, when we went to people and said, hey, we need your voice, it was because for 5 years we tried every other way, every other door. And we genuinely got to this point where we're like, they can't see what we see. And they keeps being this idea of like, well, how do we know it's going to sell? And it's like, this is crazy. Everyone we know says they'll buy it. Well, let's get everyone we know to say they'll buy it. And what if we could use that voice to not to like pull it off the shelf, And so that was a real world problem. We launched a book called Chapter 1, and that was again a real problem. we needed real money, cash,
Mm.
to scale Thank You into new categories, and we're launching into New Zealand, and we needed money. And we have this kind of crazy model where we don't have shareholders, we don't have investors, founders don't get equity. The whole business is owned 100% by our charitable trust. So it sounds cool because we can claim we exist all for the end of extreme poverty, our mission. But it sucks when you need money to, like, I don't know, do something really cool, and you're like, well, we don't have a couple of $1 million just sitting there to go and, you know, and do something kind of crazy. And so that's when we launched this book, which was a crowdfunding real problem. Like, hey, we need money, and we asked people to contribute, buy the book, fund the future, and people did. The book was sold at a pay what you want price. Some people paid 5 cents, which didn't help us. And then and actually a surprising number of people, but then others did help. There was like 1,000, a bunch at 1,000, then 7, then 10, and the most is 50,000 for one copy. And so together that group raised $2.6 million, helped us launch into the baby category, into New Zealand. And I suppose the formula is, when we get to a point at Thank You where we really try and forge a new path forward and we can't get there, we wonder, well, the collective voice is strong.
Mm-hmm.
Let's unite it. And I suppose we keep ambitiously going on new paths, and we keep getting stuck, which is, I suppose, what, you know, you do if you're pioneering. And so, I think kind of interwoven in this story is people, and people's voices can matter. And we just try and turn up every couple of years and put a cool way forward that people can help, and it does help, and the results are usually astronomical.
Hi everyone, I just wanted to jump in here to let you know, if you're enjoying this episode, it doesn't need to stop here. We've taken this episode plus all the other episodes and also video footage from the interviews and made it available for free. There's also a bunch of fantastic guides, tools and resources you can use to grow your business. To grab those tools, just go to www.the-entourage.com/podcast. Right, let's get back into the show. I think the other thing that people really buy into with all the things you do is obviously, solving real problems. That's absolutely the heart of it. But also it's the creativity that's behind the ideas. Like I always say that the best innovation is like you zig while others zag. And that seems to be what you guys have done as well. Like you're pushing up against it, It's like, well, this way is not working. So how do we do it almost the opposite? You know, this no small plan is a great example of that. It's like we've been as you've gotten bigger, you're competing against the bigger guys. They're paying more attention, and so like the traditional path is keep pushing, and you've gone, no, let's actually do the opposite. Let's freaking join forces with them, or try to at least.
Yeah. Try and find someone or some ones that have got the values on the inside that they project on the outside. But anyway, so I think you're right. I mean, it's a great point. I think Simon Sinek talks about this idea of, and I'm probably going to wreck this, and someone listening will know it better. I think he calls it an existential shift. He basically proposes, this is in my kind of layman's terms, you can do 180-degree turn on strategy, on direction, on your business model, if there's a higher purpose for it, right? So if it, and so what we're doing with No Small Plan is like, hang on, aren't you guys like David taking on Goliath, and now you're gonna like become friends with Goliath, and that doesn't work in the narrative. But what we realized is the true Goliath is that first number I told you, $63 trillion. So what if we find some partners and become a bigger David and take on the real Goliath? And so it is a 180-degree shift, but it's for the absolute aligned purpose. And I think as leaders, as individuals and organizations, we can do that. If it furthers the mission or the vision.
Well, and it really cements the importance of having a vision that you're striving towards. And I think, on one hand, I think you guys are lucky to have had like a vision that's baked into the very core of what you do. I know there's a lot of other business owners out there that don't have that. Like, do you have any strategies or advice on how to actually start, building in a higher cause to what you're doing, or making that more central to your strategy, or do they need to go and find that themselves?
Yeah, look, I think certainly for founder-led organizations, and I mean really any organization, it is a worthwhile quest
Mm,
to mine purpose. Why are
mhm,
we here? Why does this organization exist? And
mhm,
I would caution those that see this as the new paint, kind of get the purpose paint out and quickly like put it all over the organization and look, we're purposey, and there's so much of that right now, and you can see the paint dripping, and it consumers smell it. It's not genuine,
mm,
and my challenge, and this is to us at Thank You, is like, let's not put the purpose paint on and try and sell more product. Let's
mhm,
discover truly why we're here and um, the role we have to play, and let's let the purpose be the fuel on the inside. And
mhm,
when you really harness that, it will make you innovate better, market bolder, stretch further, and get better results, because there's like you've got this fuel on the inside, and everyone's like, what is going on there? And
mm,
so how do you get there? Start asking questions. Why does this organization exist? And what what are the things that maybe for a founder move you? And
mhm,
I mean move you like make you angry. That kind of justice
mm,
anger, like it's this
mhm,
is there is injustice. How can I change that? And think about the people you exist to serve and your stakeholders, and then don't add it on. Like bake it in. So yeah, we
mhm,
thank you. Absolutely, we started from the core. But we are partnering and about to partner with not just some organizations for the personal care category. The Thank You license model is actually about partnering with many organizations in many different categories to bring Thank You products to life. So
mm,
our roadmap for the next 10 years, like we lose sleep just thinking about it. Now we've got to actually make it happen. Um, but most of those organizations, I would say, aren't Thank You. Then they didn't have it embedded from the beginning. But our
mm,
proposal to them is, you can add it on later, but you've got to add it right into the core, deep into that
mhm,
P&L, right into that balance sheet. And actually, if you look at our partnership model right now, that's exactly what this is. This isn't an
mm,
initiative. This can't be like, oh yeah, we'll put your little logo on our existing products. No, no, no. You have to invest. This is a huge commitment, and it goes deep into the commercial core. And once purpose lives there, it'll transform what you do. Adding it
mm.
on the outside is like, I mean, it's like adding a coat of paint. It'll look pretty for a bit, and then it'll wear away.
Yeah, I can imagine that conversation would have freaked out a bunch of these potential partners, and only the right ones would lead into it, which is kind
Yeah,
of like
yeah.
self-selection.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's I think everyone's definitely become fluent in purpose speak, and
Yeah.
and mission, and that's fine. Like I think it comes from a good place. People want to do good, um, and so now it comes down to the let's cool, let's do it. And
Yeah.
it will cost something short term, but I think hopefully most people that you guys are connected with aren't in this for a quick buck, here today, gone
Mm.
tomorrow. We want to build things that last. We want to build
Yep.
things that benefit, our communities and our families and our society. And so playing the longer game doesn't always help your, this year's P&L, but it's the long game, and I think the long
Yeah.
game is the best game.
I think what I probably see the most with the businesses we work with is that they, it's not, you don't see much of the whole Hollywood stereotype of entrepreneurship. Like, there's not that many people out there, in my experience, that are like, oh, I see an opportunity, I'm going to build up a business to take over the world and then exit for squillions. It's like, that's not really how it happens. For by far the majority of business owners, it's like they're really good at something, they service customers quite well, and they kind of fall into their business. And so it's those guys and girls at like 5-7 years in, they're starting to get a bit exhausted, that's where really tapping into purpose and fueling themselves from the inside can be super beneficial, because they're kind of at the point where they're like, unless there's a higher reason for this, like I'm knackered. I think I might do something else. Another area that I think would be interesting to touch on is that I seem to think that from Melbourne, particularly like around that Richmond area of Melbourne, there's been a ton of for-purpose businesses come out of that. Not even official hub, but I could probably name like half a dozen. And we've certainly had a couple on, like, Simon from Who Gives a Crap. And there was this kind of movement there. And So that's I actually wonder whether you would agree with me. But more importantly, it's now that you guys are getting onto the world stage. Is there that same kind of phenomenon happening at that level, or are there other for-purpose businesses doing really good things as a bit of a community, or are you guys really kind of breaking new ground on your own?
Yeah, really fascinating insight about kind of that Richmond, Collingwood kind of area, Abbotsford. I mean, I would agree. In our, I suppose, really where our old office was, across the road was Street, amazing social enterprise, and in the cafe and hospitality space. And Simon and the Who Gives a Crap team were a block over, and yeah, maybe people just sort of gravitate towards areas and tribes, and there's a bit of a phenomenon in that. I think Melbourne's social enterprise scene is strong,
Mm,
which is super cool. I think on the global stage there are lots of organizations doing good. I think there's also lots more proposing to do good,
mm-hmm,
and this is going to be there is going to be, I think, a moment for the world and for business and entrepreneurship where the lights go on, and a bunch of people will probably get caught a little bit with their pants down because it's
mm,
oh, we said it, but we didn't expect consumers to sort of be that intelligent and
mm,
like Google stuff or look like more than a millimeter deep, right? And so in those moments, I think, yeah, some organizations are getting caught out, and that's not good, to be honest. I think what is good, but it's not good because then trust goes down. There was an
mm.
organization, and we're not. I thank you. We're not like a name and shame. We're not like purpose police. No one wants those people. But there was an organization, and I nearly wrote something. I didn't. I was just shattered. They had launched a very successful business in Australia, projected that they did a lot of good with each purchase, and they didn't. And it
Mm.
was shocking. And they went to court, and they got in trouble, and they paid a fine.
Well, good.
And yeah, it is good. The cost though wasn't the fine. It was a big fine, couple of $1 million. To me, I was like, the cost is trust with consumers and people going, huh, you projected that so confidently and you didn't do it. And that's the stuff we all fear. And so I think we are looking more and more for those organizations around the world who are really, really doing good. And some we find and some we think we found. And yeah, I mean, they're maybe on a journey more than we realize, and we're all on a journey. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, well, good luck. I mean, yeah, a lot of potential partnerships ahead, like with the old guard, but also the new guard, and like imagine everyone coming together in a beautiful way. It would just be so impressive.
It would be, and I look forward to a further and I'm just trying to lock in an interview in the future, but maybe one day we'll talk about where this lands, because I think for me, yeah, it's gone back and forward. Is it the old guard? Is it the new? Is it a mix of both? And I think the common thread we're seeing is there are people in both camps who want to see a different world and
Mm,
who want to create a better way forward.
mm,
And there's a heap that actually want to maintain the status quo, which sounds bizarre, but actually it comes from risk management, and it comes
mm.
from protection of, I don't know, reputation, career. We've got to play it
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah, well, hopefully you can get that kind of revolution from the kind of like from the outside, inside, and then kind of changing it from the inside. All right, Daniel, we've got a couple more questions here that neither of us have seen. We call it "Make It Happen in a Minute." We go through just reasonably rapid fire. I will also apologise right from the outset. I'm the one that goes on tangents here, so if I do, you can just pull me back in. Ready to go?
Let's go.
All right, question number one. What's the number one thing you miss about living in Melbourne?
Oh, the food,
Yeah.
cafes, oh, and people. Sorry, friends. Shout out to my friends. Tim, it's good. It's good.
I was down in Melbourne last weekend for my brother's wedding, and I have to say, yeah, we got to some great restaurants in that short trip. It's got it. It also rained and was freezing cold. Question number two. What's been one of the toughest pieces of advice you've ever been given?
I sat down with a guy. I'd waited 9 months to meet him, and he asked me, "Do you celebrate the wins, Daniel?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Cool. What was the win, and how did you celebrate with your team?" And I was just caught. I had nothing. I was like, oh yeah, I did. He's like, most entrepreneurial leaders don't celebrate the wins, and that will break you and break your team. But you've got to
Mm.
stop. You've got to pause. And like, it was cool. I'm like, damn, that hurt. Like I waited for 9 months to meet this guy, and it just felt like it shattered me. But incredibly wise.
That is a good bit of advice. And I agree. I think entrepreneurs are because it's always like setting the next goal, and then when you hit it, it's like, well, what's next? Let's go. Like no time to celebrate. Let's crack on. All right, question number 3. Oh, that's a great question. What would be the title of your current chapter of your life?
I don't want to say it because we're kind of thinking about it for the next book.
Ah.
Well, okay.
It could be a watch this space if you want.
Yeah. Well, it could be watch this space, but here I'll put it a bit more cryptic. Backwards is forwards. And I think there is something
Nice.
beautiful about going the other way, but also going deep, right? On foundations.
Yeah.
We live in a world where everyone's building up so paper thin, so fast, and then they crumble.
Mm-hmm.
But, I suppose buildings go down before they go up. So,
Great. We'll watch and see if it is. Okay. Question number 4. Where is the most relaxing place you've ever been to?
wow. I mean, it's hard. I have 2. One is the Sunshine Coast, which may or may not be where we're living currently. It's super chill. The other is New Zealand, like Wanaka, Queenstown, different sort of relaxing. But, between those 2, it is a dream.
Awesome. And last question before we have a couple of final kind of comments to wrap up is if an entrepreneur wanted to go all in on their business and vision, what's one thing they need to do to make it happen?
Burn the boats, is that the term? You gotta go all in. I finished. I sort of deferred to university in my 3rd year, and I never went back. And it wasn't because Thankyou was successful. It's because actually we weren't. And it was like that year 3 for me was like goodbye to that degree, burn that, but get this thing going.
Yeah. Burn the boats, go all in.
Can I ask you that? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, you can ask me that. I wasn't ready for you to like turn the
Well,
spotlight
no,
back
okay,
on
I
me.
won't do that. No, I won't do that. Tim.
No. Challenge accepted.
What do you think?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about before. It's like they've really got to come up with a purpose or a vision that really resonates with them. And when I say resonate, I mean like you can feel it here, just like in your diaphragm. They need to find out what's something that's going to resonate with them, because particularly if you're going to rally a whole business behind this, it's got to be something that's meaningful, like real problems, like you mentioned before. And so that's the first thing. It's like sit with it, make sure it's a purpose or a vision that you genuinely believe in, and then you can build around that.
Love that.
Man, it's been awesome to have a chat with you. I've been watching the journey for so long, and I think you're just doing such impressive stuff. You have done impressive stuff, and this next chapter, whatever it's going to be called, if you get all the pieces together and get these players together, you will be on the world stage. You have been operating on the world stage in the impact that you've made, but the volumes that you talk about, the spending that you're talking about, hundreds of trillions of dollars. Imagine being able to capture just a minute part of that and divert it to those that are in need.
Yeah, man, that's it.
Daniel Flynn, been awesome having you on. We will definitely get you back on once you've got some even bigger and better things to announce. Thank you very much for the conversation.
Tim, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Make It Happen show. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And it doesn't need to end there. We've actually gone and grabbed a whole bunch of extra resources for you. Behind the scenes footage, videos from this and all the other episodes, as well as show notes that you can grab for free. Just head along to www.the-entourage.com/podcast and you can grab all those extra resources. Thanks for tuning in, and I cannot wait to introduce you to our next guest on the next episode.